Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Similarly Different. On today's episode, I have a lovely guest that has a great story and even greater insight on a topic that sometimes we kind of feel fearful of or even think it's taboo to talk about. I have Wes Dunn with me here. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to be talking about everything finance as well as his roadmap to your financial freedom, which is his book that is out now. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be on your show and also hearing your story as well. So I've got lots of shows to listen to now to get caught up, but it's such an honor to be with you today.
Of course. Now, finance is something that a lot of people are either scared to talk about, scared to even face, run away from, or dive into it with no sense of fear at first, and then it takes a hold of them and freezes them. So I want to go from the beginning of how you even got into finance. Is it something that it came from your family? Was it something you were interested in? Were you a math genius growing up? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up in a family that we didn't know that we were poor till later.
Okay.
And so I just thought everyone lived that way. And then, high school came around and I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have money,
Yeah.
Or like some of the stories of growing up, there was one Christmas where my gift that year was a box of cereal. And it was a box of Frosted Flakes. And I thought I hit the jackpot. I was like, I've won. This is the best Christmas ever. And years later, as you're talking with friends and they got a bike, and you're like, you got a bike, I got Frosted Flakes. And and you're both excited about it. So I didn't necessarily grow up around money. I did, though, have my grandpa, my dad's dad. He was always really good with money. So he was always talking about money. And frankly, it's the only thing I ever remember him talking about was money. And then he always warned us kids, don't ever do drugs. And so that was his big thing. But we didn't really have a whole lot of money growing up. But there was always this piece of me that I knew, not agreed, but I knew was hey, I like this game.
Yeah.
I like the game of money. And even as a kid, I was a kid on the corner. I would go buy some soda and then I would sell it. To
the entrepreneur in you?
Yeah, it was always kind of a piece in there. And so I think it's part of the way God built me, if I'm honest. And so I had some of those gears there.
And what age were you at when you realized, oh, we are poor?
It was probably around in high school.
Okay.
And there was a couple times my mom, we would go to celebrate. It's Friday night, man, what a great week. And we're hey, let's go to Denny's to celebrate. That's what and I was moon's over my hammy, let's go celebrate, right? And she'd be hold on, I gotta, so she'd find a quarter and go to the payphone and call her bank to see if she had enough money. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was 15 or 16, I was this doesn't feel right. Something about this is a little bit off. But it probably wasn't into my later high school years, 17, 18, when I really, really recognized, hey, looking back, we didn't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And so I imagine for kids today or people today with social media, they'll probably experience that much, much sooner.
Right.
My wife and I, we have 2 kids, a 12-year-old boy and a 7-year-old daughter, and they're already becoming aware of what their friends have.
Yeah.
And they're not on social, but social media probably doesn't help as well.
Yeah. So then you realized that your family wasn't that financially well off, but you still never felt like you missed a meal or anything like that. So it's to you, in your mind, you had what you needed.
We had what we needed, but there were some times looking back where we didn't miss a meal. I will say that.
Yeah.
We didn't miss a meal, but there were lots of meals that were not good.
Yeah.
And so there was I remember distinctly, I'm in 2nd or 3rd grade. My mom made a big pot of split pea soup.
Okay.
And I hated it. But that's what we had literally for 3 nights in a row. That was it. And also at that time, my bedroom we had this little 2-bedroom apartment, or it might have been a 1-bedroom apartment. And my bedroom was in the dining room, and there was a sheet hanging from the ceiling that my mom stapled into the ceiling. And so that kind of created my own little my own little abode, which I thought, this is awesome. I've got my own room. I can look into the kitchen. This is great.
If you get hungry, it's right there.
Yeah. And so we never really missed a meal per se. And so I'm also careful to define poor, because for some people hey, you never missed a meal, or
of course,
things like that. But there were sometimes where it felt like there's more lack than abundance.
And then you graduated high school.
Yeah.
And did you go straight to college, or?
Yeah. So at that point, my dad, he had bought a furniture business.
Okay.
And so I was helping him out his furniture business, and I was actually just going to stay. So it's like, that's kind of what you do. You help family out. And I'm sure people watching are like, hey, that's what you do. You just stick around for a while. And I was going to not go to college. And then he's like, Wes, you need to go. Because I had already applied. I was accepted. They're like, hey, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And so I literally waited. I think it might have been a Saturday night. And school started on Monday. And I called my sister. I was like, hey, at this point, we're in Bakersfield, California. And I was like, hey, sis, do you want to take a drive with me to Seattle, like right now? Because my school starts on Monday. And so we hopped in the car and started school.
And did you go into school already knowing you wanted to go into finance? Or when did the spark of finance come into your life?
The spark of finance was probably like a year later. So I ended up helping and taking over my dad's business. I was like 19.
Oh, wow.
Completely not qualified.
Yeah.
My dad's like, hey, this thing's not working. I'm going to go back to teaching. Can you take this over? So I'm 19, not qualified like to do this. And I remember I was stressed. I cried in this office. There's like grown men coming to me for their paychecks. And I'm like, just so much immense pressure. And I don't think I was any good at it, frankly. But I remember I went back to school. And one of my mentors, it was a teacher. His name's Tom, and I talk about him in the book as well. Tom's like, hey, you know that you can get credit for that? I was like, talk to me a little bit more. And he's like, you can get something called credit for displayed competency. And so I had to go sit before the business department and say, hey, here's some of the experiences that I have. And so they actually gave me, I had to pay a smaller fee for it, but they literally gave me some college credits.
Oh, wow.
And that is really what helped. That was that first step. But it was a mentor saying, hey, you should like lean into this a little bit.
And then now that you're taking care of this business and you're starting to have this spark for finance and all that stuff, how does it go into actually making it into a career?
So that's probably something I fought for a while.
Okay.
And so I've always enjoyed like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, talking about investments. That's just something I enjoy. So on vacation, my wife and I were having a great time. My favorite vacation would probably be in Florida, looking at the water. I've got a book in my hand about like marketing research or something like that. Like I enjoy that.
Yeah.
So it's later on, we're going down that road and all of a sudden just these sparks come alive where it's like, hey, I think that there might be something to this. But a friend said, hey, we moved to LA 11 years ago, and he knew that I'd done some like investments on the side, like house flips and things like that. And he's like, hey, you should come work with us in Beverly Hills at our investment team. And I was like, dude, that is a greasy world. I am not messing with that world. You guys are like every thought in my mind of a stockbroker is like, it's not a good human, right?
Yeah.
And so I said no. And then a couple months go by and he said it again. I was like, no. And then finally, a couple more months go by and I'm like, all right, let's go. And so I actually didn't join his team. Actually, I joined one of the larger teams in Beverly Hills. And that's really how I got into that.
And
it was
how
a
long
little
were
bit
you
reluctantly. I was on that team for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And then branched out and did something different. But that's really what got me in the game.
And were you also, because for those that don't know, you also have been a pastor. So
Yeah.
were you a pastor throughout this whole time, or did that go a little bit later in life?
So at this time when I'm working Beverly Hills, I was in that full-fledged.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit tougher because I had to study for something called the Series 7 exam and a 66 and insurance. And it's like, it would be similar to like maybe taking your master's in 6 months or getting your Juris Doctorate.
Okay.
But so I'm studying that, I'm going after that, and that's all I did, like 60 hours a week. And so it just felt like finals, if anyone remember, like college or high school finals, it's like, it just felt like finals forever. But that's what I did full time for a while, yeah.
Oh, okay. And then from having the mindset of, from not having much growing up to then now being in this financial world that is literally a doggy dog, very rough, and like you said, very greasy, when it comes to it. What shifts did you have to create in your mind to be able to be in that confidently? Or was it a thing of fake it till you make it that you dealt with? And did you ever feel, because like I think as a man, when it comes to women, it's a lot of different when it comes to our emotions. But as a man, how was it for you to process the fact that you grew up in this other type of lifestyle and now you're doing this? Were you able to naturally shift into it just because of a mindset of work? Or did you ever battle with, do I belong here? Can I even do this? I don't come from money. Like I've just been learning and reading about this and hoping for the best? Or did you do it because you wanted more for yourself?
Yes, I think if everyone's honest, I think everyone has a little piece of that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Of if people found out, they would say, I don't belong here. Everyone has some element of that. And for me, being in the investment world, a lot of these people did come from money.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, if people found out. So like even me telling some of the stories that I would tell openly now, I probably wasn't as like, hey, everyone grew up poor. Let me manage your money. It was more of like, I think also as I've kind of processed and also wanting to bring hope to others who feel like I'm stuck in poverty. I can never get out. It's like, hold on, no, you can. But for me going in that investment space, it's a lot of sharks, a lot of people that come from money. They know everyone. And it's like, I don't know those people. I don't come from that world and I don't have a home in the Hamptons. But you know what I do have? I've got some grit. I've got some willingness that I want to grow. And actually, I think I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah. Okay. But did you ever question being in the industry and did you ever want to leave it?
I would say this. I'd never questioned being in it because I was like, it took me a while to say, but I'm good with money. Like just in the same way that someone's like, hey, I'm decent at golf.
Yeah.
Like I don't golf, but actually I really enjoy the concept of money and not from a greed sense, but just from a sense of like, for me, it's like a board game.
Yeah.
Like I just actually enjoy working with it. I enjoy like today flying here. I'm listening to podcasts about money, not because there's an assignment, not because I'm preparing for a meeting, but I just actually enjoy it.
Yeah, you love the subject. You naturally gravitate towards it.
So working in the investment space, there is a lot of people that probably they feel like they deserve to be there. And I'm like, it's kind of like, when LeBron says, hey, I'm just some poor kid from Akron, Ohio. And it's like, hey, I'm just happy I get to be here. There is a little bit of that always with me. I'm like, hey, I don't come from like the best background. I love my parents so much and they tried to do their best. But there's also this piece like, hey, my parents divorced when I was young. We are like poverty for the next couple of years. And really a big piece of it was I just got involved with a really good church, which had really good mentors that surrounded me, that really built me up and encouraged me. And that really inspired me. And so there's a piece of me, I'm like not equating myself with LeBron, but there's a piece of me of like, I'm thankful I get to be in the room.
Yeah, and I think that you took something that maybe was, like you said, your parents did as much as they could, that maybe to others might have been a negative, upbringing because you didn't have the glitz and the glam.
Yeah.
But instead you were like, well, that doesn't have to be my journey or where it stops. I can change it and elevate from it. And the fact that you had great mentors along the way that were able to inspire and instill in you the ability to think of yourself higher than what your current situation was, which I think is really important because a lot of people, when they're growing up, whether it be from their family, the society, the neighborhood they grew up in, whether it be the country they came from, or even a relationship, let's say, if you get married and divorced, you think that you identify only with that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a very firm believer, and we talk about it a lot in the podcast, that you can reinvent yourself, you can evolve from whatever situation it is. So in this case, it was you as a child, but anybody listening, if they may have gone through a hard financial situation, if they are currently going through that, whether it be from, like I said, a divorce, whether it be from having a lot of debt in college, going into college and coming out. I know that my little sister, I talk about her a lot on the podcast, but my little sister, one of the biggest things when she first started college was she actually wanted to leave college, even though she had a full ride, because of the idea that since she's in the medical program, she eventually was going to have to take a loan because that's just how the US is when it comes to education. And she was like, no, I don't want to be in debt. But her fear of debt came from our past history of our parents and how they handled finances. And I remember I used to always tell her, that doesn't have to be your story.
Yeah.
When you do get that loan, it serves a purpose and there's a way out of it. You got to, work through that. So for people that may be watching and that see that they were like, wow, this guy, like he didn't come from much, but he just had this instilled confidence in him throughout life, whether it was from mentors, whether it was that you grew up with that spirit of always wanting more, whatever it was, what would you say to the person that says, you sound great and that sounds all jolly, but I'm just not at a place right now where I maybe believe in myself to the level that you did right off the bat, but I want to be better in finances.
Yeah.
How can I tap into that mindset to truly believe that I can be more than what my past has been?
Yeah, I think someone could look at your story.
Yeah.
They could look at other inspirational stories of, hey, this is my past, but this is where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so much power to an inspirational story because most people, like when you see a story or you see a movie, you can see bits of yourself in that. And so you're sharing your story about your past and your childhood and things maybe that didn't go well and things that have gone well. And someone can see part of themselves in your story. And I think if anyone is lacking in that confidence, I would go find some really good stories.
What were some things in your early 20s that I guess helped build your confidence?
I had a couple wins along the way. And so I had a couple investment wins that worked out well. And then I had one that worked out terribly. And actually I share that story in here as well, which while this deal is literally falling apart, I had a short sale. And so I had one house, I made like $100,000 and I was like 24, 25. And so this is like 20 years ago. And so it's like $1 million in today's money or whatever with inflation. But I felt like, dude, I'm crushing it.
Yeah.
And then the very next deal, I lost everything that I had rolled into it. But it was this couple I sat down with and they're an older couple. Their names are the Logiers. Very, very sweet couple. And I look back now, they're worth tons of money. And the fact that they came to my turf and sat around my kitchen table and they says, Wes, you're gonna make it. I think they said, this is the 7th major recession that we've seen. You're gonna make it. And that just breathed such life into me because, our failure is not final. And like you said, you can reinvent yourself. That's not the end of your story.
Right.
Like you have another chapter.
Yeah. I think for me, like growing up, I always had a really fearful mentality to debt. So when I'll never forget this, and in Florida, there's this furniture company called Rooms to Go. And my mom bought a beautiful, beautiful set. And at the time, she was with my dad, but she ended up getting divorced. And when the divorce was happening, she stopped making payments. And it was the type that like you buy a set and then you pay monthly payments off.
Yeah.
And this was I want to say this was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I'll never forget, I was home alone and they started calling. And they were like, but this was illegal what they did. They were like, we need the payment from so-and-so. We need the payment from so-and-so. And I was like, she's not home. She's not home. I hung up and I called my mom at work and I was like, some guys are calling saying that they need payment. And she was like, just don't answer the phone. They called again and left a voicemail. And they were like, we know you're home. Da, 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 da. So I answer and I'm like, she's not home. And they were like, well, tell her that we're outside and we're going to go in and get the beds. Mind you, this is a legit furniture company. And I remember to this day, the fear that came over me of
take my bedroom.
My mom didn't pay. So since my mom didn't pay, my bedroom set's about to be taken by these two men and I'm home alone. And I called my mom hysterically crying. And I remember my mom wanted to rip them to shreds because she was like, one, that has to be illegal. Like they can't be calling you, telling you that. But the fear of she doesn't have enough right now came over me. And ever since then, growing up and a few other instances, whenever I would make any purchases, people would be like, but if you have money coming in, like it's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not fine. I don't have the money. If the money is not in my account, I do not have the money.
Right.
And it's because of things like that I grew up of the fear mentality. But in the same instance, in the last 6 years, I have tried to work on not being so scared of money.
Yeah.
Because money, like I think money, you either, like you said, it's a video game, board game, or you're so scared of it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a healthy relationship you can have with money. And I'm trying to learn that.
Yeah.
But I think so many people create their identity based off money.
Yeah.
And how have you been able to not base your identity off your finances since you worked in a financial company, you had ups and downs. But like you said, in that industry, it's very greasy, it's very shark, it's very shark-like. So how were you able to grow from that?
I think, well, first off, how old were you when you got that phone call? Like, hey, we're outside.
12.
12, okay. So it's
say
like,
like
that
12.
sounds like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the house.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry that happened. I think lots of people have those types of stories, right? Maybe not at that degree, but they have some sort of story that really can help frame your thinking on money in either a positive or negative way. Dad chooses money over mom. Mom chooses money over kids. So fear can also be a fear of money, fear of having money, fear of being controlled by money. I actually know people that their parents had money and they were consumed by money. And so they were actually afraid to have money. And so they did very poorly with money. And it's almost like, why are you so bad with money? I'm like, oh my gosh, are you afraid that if you have money, money will have you? So you don't have to have money for money to have you.
Right.
You can either have no money and money has you. You can have money and money has you. Or you can not have money or have money and it doesn't have you. It's more about like, what is the consuming thing in my life? Is it about money? And so I think for anyone who's growing from that, I think you have to identify those moments.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, Vanessa and I were about maybe a year or two into our marriage. And I remember going to a grocery store and for some reason I wanted to buy cereal. And so I'm buying some cereal and something in me said I had to buy the cheap cereal. the cereal that comes in the bag, it
Yeah.
gets soggy real quick, and even though I could, at this point, we're both working, I can afford whatever cereal I want.
Right.
And it's not like we're not talking about caviar. We're not talking about expensive steaks. We're talking about, are you going to spend $4 or $2?
Right.
And something was in me that I was like, I can't do that. I can't afford that because there was a piece of me that was still stuck in that old mentality. And not that we go into like full on treat yourself and like everything is like,
No, yeah, but it's still a fear mentality of like, what if leaves? What if I don't have? What if, I get that.
so it's more identifying, I don't want to be controlled by money in any aspect of my life. I want my life to be controlled by vision, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Here's where I'm going. Here's the type of man that I want to be. Here's for us, for Vanessa and I, here's the type of people that we want to be, the type of home that we want to lead, and the type of legacy that we want to lead. We will be led by vision, not fear, not my parents' failure, not even my own past failures.
Yeah.
Like, financial things that didn't work out. We will not be led by that. Fear is not our future. Greed is not our future. The vision that we have from God, that will lead our life.
Yeah, and it's so crazy that you said that. Even though you said it about cereal, I am a workaholic. Been trying to work on it, and so is Courtney. We're trying to work on it this year. And I was going through a burnout earlier this year. And my friend said, hey, if you live in California, this hotel. He said, hey, I have this crazy stay for 98% off at the Peninsula Hotel.
Oh, wow.
Now, this place is $1,400 a night, That's in an off season. He said, I can give it to you for $108 a night. And I said, oh my goodness. Listen, I am a Taurus. I am a girl that loves her bouginess. And if I can get it, I am like, but I am also very much, you need to be responsible.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, I'm really tired. I've been crying. I'm so tired. Like, I don't want to go out of town and spend thousands of dollars, but I know I need to take a break from my home, my area, the city for a second.
Yeah.
And when I was driving there, the amount of anxiety that came over me, you would have thought I was paying $1,400 a night for 3 nights. And I had to pull over and sit myself and genuinely look in the mirror and say, you're okay. You deserve this. You can afford this.
This is not going to break you. Yeah.
This is not going to break you. And it's like, I don't work X amount of hours. I haven't been able to hit certain goals for me to literally be like, oh my God, what if tomorrow disappears? That is so unhealthy as well. And I think like I realized it the most the last 2 years when I've been able to truly feel stable in what I've built for myself and in my career. And I think that a lot of immigrants, a lot of women, a lot of broken homes, kids that come from broken homes, adults now that come from broken homes have that fear of lack. And for me, it stemmed so deeply to the point that it gave me an anxiety attack. But I think for me, what I do, and you can tell me what you recommend for anybody else, but I instantly just put on worship music because it's the thing that calms me. So I put on worship music and I just literally looked in the mirror and I was like, you wouldn't have been given this if you couldn't handle it. You wouldn't have been given this if this wasn't for you. And now go enjoy it. And the moment I walked into the room, it was the nicest place I've ever been to. And when I walked into the room, I was like, oh my God, this looks like a 2-bedroom condo. Like, this is crazy. And I remember that I just sat in the balcony for 3 hours. I ended up falling asleep, taking a nap. My friend called me and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I just woke up from a nap in the balcony. I feel like I'm in Italy. And she was like, I love that for you because you deserve it. And maybe it's not to that essence, right? But maybe it's an ice cream cone. There's been times where I've been like so burnt out and I've gone and I've been like, I'm going to go get myself an ice cream cone today, and just enjoying the big or the small, or make the small things the big things in your day. It's so important because I do feel is a lack in this generations that we are in, of like at least the generation I'm in, of being able to give yourself things without feeling guilt. Yeah. Because a lot of the times our parents didn't have it.
Yeah. Like, am I okay to go to the peninsula when mom's couch and beds were getting potentially taken?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, like to not identify your financial story of who you are with what your upbringing was, or your failures that have had in the past, or, past circumstances that you have. Like, I'm not saying go run up your credit card on it, but when you get opportunities, I always say that my friend Andy, the one that has that hookups, I'm always like, you literally are sent from God, because you call me with the craziest
Andy in my life.
I'm like, literally, I had not spoken to him for 3 months, and he was like, hey, Christina, his wife, he's like, hey, Christina thought about you today, and I have this deal at the Peninsula. Do you want it? And I was like, oh my God. It was God. God called you guys. So in that essence, I do believe in what you're saying, and not identifying or making, your story that, because things are always going to happen in your life, right?
Yeah.
We can't control, but we can work on the vision, and we can work on greatness, and we can work towards for it. But I do think it's very interesting that the cereal was the cereal for you.
Yeah.
And the cereal was the cereal story of when you were a child.
Yeah.
What's your favorite cereal now?
I don't eat cereal. I don't eat cereal. I'm a really...
You're an adult?
Well, also that. My son, though, does like Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Okay.
And sometimes, like when I'm drinking my black coffee in the morning, I will sneak a couple of bites of it.
Are you like cerealed out?
I think I might have been cerealed out. I'm like, I eat a pretty boring breakfast, and then like I like a good dinner.
Okay.
So I like a good dinner. So
now, in your book, you talk about 80% of all millionaires are first generation. Yeah. Now, can you speak about people who are listening that feel like they can achieve a prosperous lifestyle because they didn't come from one?
That right there is one of the most exciting things for me, because it creates so much opportunity for the rest of us. Because when we see wealthy people, first off, we have to define what wealth or millionaire is, because most of the time when we see someone like they must be wealthy, as someone who's worked in the finance world and sees people's true net worth, I'm like, oh, you're actually just wearing it. Like you're driving it, versus, true people that are actually really wealthy. A lot of times they look like, hey, do you need some money? Can I cover your meal? And they're like, no, they actually own the place, Mm-hmm. But the average millionaire in America, 80% of them are first gen. So they're not getting money from mom and dad. So there are those people, and we kind of highlight those stories, but those are the minority. The overwhelming majority are people who they just said, you know what, I don't want to live poor anymore.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. Some people get stuck in, hey, I'm not, we've got food now, we can buy the cereal we want, and then they get stuck and they never progress forward. You can just see that there's no glass ceiling. You can actually break through, but we just have to define what is that, what does wealth really look like? Does wealth look like going out all the time, buying whatever you want? It's like, no, someone who has $1 million net worth, the chances are, and by the way, there's lawyers, accountants. One of the top 4 professions for millionaires is a teacher.
Really?
So yes.
Wait, what state?
Just nationally.
Okay.
So California and LA, we actually pay our teachers much higher than other states. So, if you're going to, middle America, they're probably not making as much money as is required to live here. But it's just someone that steady build over time. Just like Rome is not built in a day,
right.
Like neither are your finances. And so here's what I have seen though. People that are willing to work at it week after week, month after month, all of a sudden they look behind them and they go, oh, I hit my 6th zero and now I'm in my 7th. I hit $1 million in net worth. And they're probably driving a Camry or some Toyota or Honda. They're driving something, nothing super flashy.
Yeah.
But just week after week, month after month, they've just built this empire. And so it's not like I've got to hit the number. Some people, they feel this pressure that if I'm going to get there, my only way is a scratch ticket. Is luck. And it's like, no, you can do this. It's just probably going to take more time and probably more work than you want, but it's achievable and obtainable for anyone.
Do you think it's obtainable if a person is listening right now and they're in crazy debt?
Yeah. So if someone's in crazy, and we'd probably have to define crazy debt.
Yeah. Let's say they have, listen, for me, any debt is like, I get scared. I went through a divorce and I had $40,000 of debt because of not paying a credit card that American Express fines you. Do not do that. Do not follow my steps. But during the pandemic, I was able to bring that back to 0, and I was so proud of myself. But let's say 40.
So if someone's in debt, the first thing is you got to get out of debt first before you start building up, your investments and other things like that. And I talk about that in the book as far as there's actually a proper order to do this in. Today I got on a plane, the pilots are going through all their checks, and there's 100 different checks that they go through in order every single flight.
Right.
Same goes for finances. You've got to go through the same checks. But getting out of debt, most of the time, people are paying these credit card companies 19% 19 point. What was, if you don't mind asking?
I think mine was like 27, 29%. So it was like the moment I didn't pay the first late bill,
Then
it was so
jumped it up.
intense because
Yeah.
it was really only, it was a $7,000 card that I didn't pay. So it turned into $12,000 and
Oh
the
my.
$12,000 within 2016 to 2020 turned into 40.
What was the
It was like
original amount?
37, 7,000.
That's a good investment for them.
Yeah.
So they invest 7 and it turns to almost 40. So that 28.99 or 29.99 is a very normal number. You are doubling their money every 2.4 years.
Yeah.
Every 2.4 years, which is the most insane stat. So their money's getting multiplied. You have to get aggressive with, I am not doubling American Express, Bank of America, Chase Sapphire. I'm done doubling their money. I need to start doubling mine. But the ship has some holes in it, so we're going to plug away at, hey, let's stop paying them and start working on paying us. But the first thing is you have to pay them off. Every nickel and dime you find in the couch, everything that is not, that's not paying for your bills or paying for your food or health or things like that or giving generously, everything that's extra you have to send to taking care of that. But one of my mentors, he went back to zero. And actually the average millionaire, they've gone to zero at least once.
Wow.
And so they learn from the mistakes and they go, like you, I won't do that again.
Right.
Like that was really painful.
Yeah.
And you learn from your mistakes. You're like, let's not do that again. And then you just get better and better.
And what are some cards? I guess this could be a really intricate question, but what are some cards for somebody that's trying to start to build their credit? Maybe building their credit has always been such a fear of them because of going into debt.
Yeah.
So I've heard from different people, different things. So is there somebody that, maybe my sister, let's say, she's 23 years old and she's like, just has her school credit card.
Yeah.
What is something that you recommend for somebody like that?
If someone's just trying to build credit, I don't like paying for building credit at all. And I know that some people are like, hey, just, buy something and just pay the minimum payment for a couple of months. And I'm like, no, buy it, pay it off. Like I'm a bit obsessed. I check all of our accounts at least once a week. And we pay off our credit cards twice a month for us, just because we're like, hey, we actually are pretty aggressive on that. But you can actually get prepaid credit cards. You can get lower limit credit cards and just don't wait for them to send you a bill, pay it off.
Yeah.
And, most of the time, though, people, they spend here on their credit card and then they write checks over here on other stuff. And then at the end of the month, they go to pay this credit card off and there's nothing left. And they're like, oh, geez, where did I put that? Then you're in a real hurt. So if you do it at the same time, you buy like $100 worth of groceries or something, and then you send $100 from your checking account over, then, kind of helps you keep track. But you don't have to do major purchases to build your credit. You can start with a student card.
Yeah.
Lots of banks will start with like a $500 card, or you can do actually prepay.
The secured credit.
Yeah.
I got her a secured credit card.
Yeah.
I was like, I need you to learn.
Couple $100 up front. Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did you come to creating the roadmap to your financial freedom, 10 practical steps for tough financial times? What were you in bed? Were you having a walk? Were you talking to your wife that you were just like, now it's the time for me to do this?
Yeah, I was meeting with a client and some dear friends of ours, and she actually ended up writing one of the forwards for the book as well. So I'm meeting with her and her husband, we're talking through it, and I'm giving the same speech I've given 10,000 times. Hey, you've got your financial offense, you've got your financial defense, you've got these people working for you, you've got these things that are helping you make money, these people are helping you keep your money, and you need everyone on your team, right? And so I'm giving the same speech over and over. And I was driving home, and I remember I called Vanessa, my wife, and I was like, I got to write this down because I've given the same speech. And what I wanted to be able to do is just hand it to someone and say, hey, read this, and then let's talk in a week. And so I went home that night and I started writing. And for the next 6 months, every night from about 8 p.m. to midnight, I wrote every single night. And sometimes even longer than that. I was like, hey, I'm going to flow. I got to stay up for another couple hours. So we put our kids down, kids go to bed, come downstairs, sit on the couch, and or at my desk, and I just start writing. And really I wanted to be able to give people practical steps. I'm writing this book to the younger version of me. I'm writing this book to the younger version of you to not only inspire, but actually here is your first step.
Yeah.
Social media right now is filled with it's like lots of gurus and like lots of vision, but like no direction. Like I'm inspired. I just don't know what to do next.
Right. Or
So it's
even
like,
how to start. Like that sounds great, but what do I do?
yeah, I'm pumped, man. I feel great. I feel great about myself. I feel great about my future. I don't know what I'm going to do. Nothing's changing. So it's like, okay, let's do step number one. And step number one for me is you need to have a very clear vision for your life. What is the life that you want to build? What is the direction that you're heading? Because where I'm headed and you're headed and everyone else is headed may not be all the same way. You need to make that very clearly definable. Then the next step after that is creating a budget around that life. Because your budget is basically just micro plans to build that life. Do you really want that life? Here's the steps that you need to take. And then I go on from there. So that's how this was started. And then it was just a lot of work. Honestly, writing a book, you don't write it to make money. It was honestly just to help, but it's taken off and it's been really helpful for a lot of people. So I'm grateful for that.
That's amazing. So did it take you a total of 6 months, or was it just 6 months to do the first draft?
This one probably took me 20 years because this is literally it's like 20 years of my life and soul in here.
Like 20 years.
It's my guts. This is my financial guts. And I had to work very hard to make it concise. But the first draft was about 6 months of very concerted, it was almost like a full-time job. It was a part-time job for 6 months of just nonstop plugging away at it.
That's really good. I admire you because I don't know if I could write this many pages. Now, it says, through this book, you will learn how to discuss money without emotional triggers, which I feel is something really key because a lot of people have emotions attached to money.
Yes.
Now, what are some emotional triggers that you feel, and some solutions for them?
Yeah. The number one thing I think with emotional triggers is actually identifying them. So I have a guy I talk with. And most people call him like a therapist or counselor. I'm like, that's my guy. I've got my guy, right? So I've got my guy that I talk with, right? Okay. And we talk once a month. Randy, I love him to death. So Randy's super helpful, and he helps me dive into why is that? Let's get deeper. Let's dig deeper. And as I've talked with people about their finances, some people say, this is the only way. And you have to kind of dig deeper and why is that? So actually I have a whole chapter called The Psychology of Money.
Love that.
And it's why do we make the decisions that we make when it comes to money? And it's never just about the thing. There's always something underneath that thing. So in my world, in finance and also in our church as well, success means having a nice car and dressing nice. And so it's not about the car. It's about proving to everyone else I am successful. And for some people, it's proving to mom and dad I made it. Proving to my brother I was right, or my sister, you were wrong and I was right. So it's not about that. And then so they will stretch themselves and get a $700, $800, $900 a month car payment, not because they like the car only, but also they're trying to prove something.
Right.
And so you almost have to be a therapist to yourself and go, why do you do that?
Yeah.
It's like Michael Scott in The Office when he's talking to Toby in HR one day, and he's like, why are you the way that you are? And so it's like each of us need to look in a mirror and go, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why did you just sign up for $800 a month? Or why did you buy that?
Well, I think a lot of the time, especially with social media that you were talking earlier, is that we'll spend beyond our means to hope to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's like a form of dopamine for a second, but then you realize it doesn't last. And if you just keep doing it, you're going to go without money. But then if you don't do it, then you're looking around you and you're comparing yourself to people that are either from another journey in life or are doing it and you don't even know how it really looks in their bank account or where it's coming from or, all these things. So it's like there is no real substance to your need for it. But because we see it consume so much around us, we think that it's going to bring us this peace and happiness. Now, I will say there is a form of peace that I feel knowing that I have and I'm not going without.
Yeah.
But am I going to go and swipe for Saint Laurent heels because I think they're beautiful and No, but I would love it. But I know that it's beyond my means and beyond the means of my purpose and journey and goals that I have for myself. And I think that a lot of things when it comes to money is really sitting with yourself and being honest. And it doesn't mean, oh, well, you can't afford 10 pairs of Saint Laurent, so you must be doing really bad in life, but more of what is your end goal with the money that you do want to come into your life and being more responsible and shifting and making way for more to come in. Because I always say, if I'm responsible with what I have, God will always bring me more. But until I'm responsible and I master this, why would I be given more? Okay, so in the book, you explain the process to financial freedom as a roadmap. Now, what do you say is in that roadmap? Because when I think about that, I'm thinking there's a start and there's an end. So what is the end to that roadmap, and why did you decide to call it a roadmap to financial freedom?
Great. Well, the first couple titles for it, they got X'd by a couple of different people. So I was like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? The idea is giving people clear, practical steps. This is not ambiguous. Brene Brown talks about clarity is actually kindness.
Brene Brown.
Yeah, it's like, hey, let's just be very clear. Here's your first step. And also because I'm a parent, I'm a dad, and I love my kids. I want my kids to be successful. So when I'm helping my boy Winston with the sport, like I'm learning the sport with him, and he's like, I want to learn how to hit a home run. Let's first work on our stance. Let's work on swinging through. Let's work on not dipping. Let's work on flexing the right muscles. Let's flex your abs. Let's get your arms strong. Let's work on that.
Yeah.
And so we're doing push-ups and planks at home, and we're doing all of that because this actually affects that.
Right.
So getting the right things in the right order is so important. And so for me, the end for everyone is generosity. Greed doesn't look good on anyone. The end goal for everyone is not just that you have more or obtain more, because I've seen incredibly wealthy people that are poor spiritually, they're poor in their health, they're poor in their relationships. And I'm like, that's not wealth. Wealth to me is, yes, you have means, but you also have health. You also have the relationships, and you're living generously. Like one of the sayings I would say is greed doesn't look good on anyone.
Right.
And so for me, that end thing is that you are living this generous life without giving it away. I tell the story of one of my favorite shows as a kid, the last episode. And even when I think about it, sometimes I like tear up because it was so impactful. I'm a millennial, so growing up in that world of seeing this last episode, and it's like we all have our last episode, and you don't know when your last episode will be.
Wait, what was the show? I want to know if I watched it.
It's Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, okay.
The last episode when Will's standing in the living room and he's got his hands in his pockets and he's looking around the room.
Oh, in the
and
empty room,
everything-
yeah.
Empty room. And it's like, and if you watch that live, you probably cried and you're like, oh my goodness, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the end. And this last week, I did a funeral for a friend and we had no idea. She's younger than me. So we bury her, praying for her. I lead in the funeral. It was this beautiful ceremony, but who would have thought that that was her last? No one
Right.
knew.
Yeah.
And so everyone has a last episode. So, and we don't know when that's going to be. So It's like, let's get to that end thing of generosity and living generously, blessing the people and the causes around us that we care about most.
I love that. Now, if people are watching or they're listening, what would be 3 steps that you would give them to be able to start towards financial freedom?
Number 1, buy my book.
Yes, that's first key.
First step is, buying the book. But no, practically, I would say, actually, in all honesty, I would actually say buying the book because you need something in front of you that reminds you this is where you're headed.
A
Because
roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap. I'm driving here today. I've got the map out on my phone, even though I know where I'm going. It's constantly reminding me, turn right in 500 feet.
Yeah.
That's what a roadmap does. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is finding out who do I want to become, like a very clear vision for my life. That will become the most guiding principle for you. Because now it's not about, do I have the money for a decision? It's, do I want to become that person or do I want to go that direction? Then after that is, then I'm going to create a plan, and that's it, like a budget. So I would probably put it in those 3 steps. These are the most important things. All of the other things, investments and 401ks and things, those things, and emergency funds and full emergency funds and paying off debt, all of that stuff will come later. But if you don't know who you are or who you want to become, you're just paying off debt to pay off debt.
Right.
And it's not very exciting.
Right.
And now you're still being led by money, but because now it's just by the fear of money rather than this is the person that I want to become.
And is there a site or something that you recommend for people that literally are like, I don't even know how to create a budget?
Yeah, so on my website, financialwellness.club, we have lots of stuff available. And in this book, there's a whole chapter dedicated to that with the forms as well.
Oh, amazing.
Like, hey, follow this.
Okay.
And here's the cool thing. I did it with Los Angeles in mind. It's one of the most expensive cities on the planet. So I'm like, if it works like Jay-Z said, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And when he's talking about New York, I'm like, New York and LA, maybe Miami as well. If you can make it in these cities, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
And so budget-wise, I don't want to make a budget that only makes sense in Tulsa.
Yeah.
Like, God bless if you have someone listening from Tulsa. But it's like, I wanted a budget to create a plan and a process that it works in some of the hardest areas, the most difficult areas. If it can work here, it can work anywhere.
That's so awesome. Well, I'm so excited to not only give this to some of my friends, but also see how I can benefit and implement some of these little tips and tricks because, like you said, it's a roadmap and a journey. So I'm sure there's things that I can better on my own. All right. I want to see what can you come up with that you can give us, the viewers or listeners, for 1 week, myself included in this, that we should do to be able to budget ourselves better for 1 week.
Awesome. So if if you are a coffee person or an online shopper, I would pause all of that for 1 week.
Okay.
And instead of sending that money to Starbucks or your favorite coffee shop, Alfred's, or to Amazon, you're going to take any of that money, every $3 here, $7 there, and you're going to send that to pay down your debt this week.
Okay.
And if you're already out of debt, you're still going to pause on that. And you're just going to save it, but you're going to keep in mind, like keep a chart of this is how much I spent or would have spent this week had I not put on the brakes.
You know what's crazy? I don't know if you've ever seen these things, but they have these like boxes. I don't know if you've seen them, and they have them by days and numbers, and you're supposed to put like $2 on day 1, $5 on day 2, $10, and then by the end of it, you notice how much money you've saved. So it's kind of like the same instance, but just for a week. So I'm going to do it, whether it's coffee, whether it's Amazon Prime really gets me a lot of the times, but whatever you would spend for this week from the day that you're listening for a whole 7 days, transfer it over to savings or transfer over and pay the debt. I want to thank you for being on this episode and having so many gems of finance, of life, and even just identity in this. And if you guys have not checked it out yet while listening or watching the podcast, so nicely focused, make sure to check out Roadmap to Your Financial Freedom, 10 Practical Steps for Tough Financial Times by Wes Dunn himself, available online. And are they able to get a physical copy anywhere specific?
Yeah, Amazon is going to be the #1 place to pick it up. And of course, reviews are always welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here on this episode. If there's anything else you have.
That's it.
Perfect. Well, until next time. Bye.